All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
Orb on the Movements of the Earth, episode 25, the finale. Wow, we're here. Okay, and we're in a backstory. Like, we're still in a backstory for a new character, but this is also where it concludes. And, like, I always figured that the show would conclude with, like, you know, heliocentrism
there could be more story after this. Doesn't mean this is the full adaptation of the manga.
Okay, that's fair.
Like,
that's fair.
I would say specifically not so at this point here.
Yeah, given that we got this far. Okay, yeah, that clears things up a lot.
But having Albert be someone that was connected to young Rafal, pre all just crazy stuff happening here, and then potentially tying his story back into everything feels like, in a lot of ways, we're getting into some very interesting fate stuff.
Sure.
Given that this was him as a kid being at the beginning of an incredible story, and then potentially after grown up and kind of lost all of his wonder, his Thamazane and everything, potentially finds it again through maybe the story that's been going on thus far that came all the way back to him.
Possibly.
I'm excited to see if they find a way to tie this full circle, almost like it orbited around the sun.
Yeah, coming full circle. Yeah.
Right,
I like
the
it.
SON, you know.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. But yeah, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. Wow.
That's high praise.
Whoa. Oh shit. Right now, yeah. Holy shit.
Getting real pointed with your commentary there. Okay.
Yeah. In humanity and humanity's curiosity, I just got real depressed right there. I just got real depressed there. Truth is absolutely seen as relative right now.
You like making dramatic declarations.
Yeah. Go hang out with them, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just go and sit there with a bunch of adults.
Yep. Making sure the introvert actually makes some friends at the party.
Huh. Oh. Huh? Oh. Yeah, sure. Dang it.
Okay.
No, buddy. No way. No way.
What?
What the
What?
Was he gonna leak basically what was going on with Rafal?
Okay.
No way. Yeah, he's dead.
This is all stuff that happened before Rafal died.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He was willing to destroy.
What are we watching?
I keep forgetting that Rafal was a pathological liar
Yeah.
and a terrifying manipulator.
He was also 12.
結局彼はその演説が終わってすぐ村の人たちに捕らえられました。その後は知らない。父は言った。疑えと。
Yeah.
結果彼は誰も信頼せ先生は言った。信じろと。結果彼は自ら
Yeah.
従って殺人も厭わなくなった。
Uh-huh. No, they're definitely potential, but they're pitfalls on two ends of things.
疑念と信念2つ持っていて不都合が。アクイナスは知性を一方では物体的で
And immaterial. Yeah, yeah.
物体的に
Yeah.
捉えました。
Yeah, it involves the mundane and the transcendent. Yeah.
これらの矛盾は両立します。
Mm-hmm.
なぜか。それが
Because human beings are contradictions. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
矛盾を曖昧を混乱を受け入れられる。むしろそこで理性の息継ぎをする。
A breather.
この世界が存在するという奇跡を感じられないでいい。
Right, the wonder has been killed from you. Yeah.
この世のすべてが奇跡的だと知っていた。
Or you believed.
経験や記憶、過去や故郷、そして痛みと引き換えに奇跡まで失ってし
Damn.
空を見ればいいのです。そして深く息を吸う。
Mm.
これはそんな簡単な問題じゃないです。では、あなたが勇気を出してくださったので、私も人には言えない悩みを告白します。
Okay.
友人を見殺しにしたことです。発端は友人がある仕事で重大な違反を犯してしまったんで。
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, this is one of the two young guys with Novak.
Oh.
彼の罪が重いからこそ、
Hmm.
彼を諭し、救うことが重要だった。
Well, hang on.
Maybe?
今日まで私があの過去から目をそらしてきたことです。でも今初めてこの悩みを言葉にできた。
Right, you made the confessional booth idea for yourself. Yeah.
あなたは私に話してくれた。だからきっと進める。神は私たちを認めてくださる。いくら悩んで問うても神は口を開かない。そうですよ。だから永遠に私たちは考え続けられるのです。
Yeah, that no answer truly ever comes. Yeah. The general pursuit of the universal.
効果を捧げればパンを得られる。税を捧げれば権利を得られる。
Going back to the beginning.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
何を捧げればこの世のすべて
Everything.
と思いますか。その答えを探してください。
Yeah.
何のためにこの世で再び生きるために。そこで大学へ行くのは一つの道だと思いますよ。
Could be.
では神のご加護を。
Draw them. Yeah.
この世の美しさのためなら犠牲はやむを得ない。僕は何があろうと君の好奇心を否定しない。
先生、この世の美しさを追求したい。そのために何か犠牲になっても構わないけど、隠そうとする父さんも排除しようとする先生も有効じゃなかったことだけは確かだ。僕らは足りない。だ
Yeah.
から補い合え。
Yeah.
先生、僕もタウマ善意を感じます。疑いながら進んで 信じながら戻って
Wow.
美しさにき
Yeah.
らめきに迫り詰めてみせます。
おお、戻ったか。ずいぶん遅かったな。
親方、
Yeah, this is your master now. Yeah. Yeah.
アルベルト君だっけ。
はい、
じゃあここにサインして。アルベルト・ブルゼフスキ。
ええ、ブルゼボ、僕の地元の名です。
Yeah. Wow. Oh.
音月さんは
Oh.
Okay.
たつきでもな。もしかしたら前ここにす。
Yeah. Yeah.
しかしこのってやつのためもだ
Yes. Yes.
地球の運動について。
書き違いかな。運動するのは天球だし。地球の運動についてか。
Wait a minute. Yeah. Let's think on that.
1460
Okay.
Wow.
後に同大学で20年にわたり教員として働く。大学では主に
Wait.
Okay.
Did he have a student?
1400
Yeah.
彼は当時の天文学の教科書
All right.
惑星の新理論への注釈書を書き、1491年彼の注釈書で天文を学んだ同大学の生徒の一人にコペルニクスという
Yeah.
青年がいる。
Wow.
Okay.
Wait, so that is the end
That's
of
the
the
end of the
series
show.
then.
Okay.
That's the end of this. That's the end of the series. Okay.
Okay.
That's the end of the
That's the
series.
show.
I was very wrong. I thought that potentially the way that they were setting this up was to have things continue forth into another arc that would potentially get into more historical stuff. It did not go that way.
Nope.
Instead, they did the thing that you do in a lot of historical fiction or historical biographical type stories, where you basically go, and here's where life continued on with them.
Right.
That
Here's the connective
Albert-
tissue back into history.
Yeah, Albert Brzezinski ended up becoming one of the teachers of Copernicus, who then would go on to define a lot of the ways in which we understand astronomy and modern astronomy today.
Yep.
Fascinating. I was waiting for Copernicus to get brought into the story. He never did. But the idea that, oh, this was one of his teachers in Poland, awesome.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yep.
I also really like the idea that this episode basically left us with a lot of questions, in that there's no real specific way you can get universal truth out of a human story. You're basically
Sure.
going to be left with a lot of contradictions and things that you have to hold in tandem here, because if we're to learn from our predecessors, or human predecessors in that regard, we're going to need to have to be able to throw out a bunch of the stupid shit.
Sure.
Because one, you and I were pretty ignorant apes to the people that will come 100 years from now.
Right.
And
yeah.
you're going to have to accept that, and that's okay.
Yep.
Now,
Novak's whole role in the story and the church and all that stuff in a lot of ways was pointing at that idea. Right?
yeah. And we had a little bit of a discussion before this episode's discussion, in that the story thought that probably a good way to do that would be to take Rafal and have him murder the father to showcase the contradiction of humanity in this regard here. And I feel like, given that this is the end of the series, and given that this is the final point to have here, it's a bit abrupt of a rug pull to use at the end.
Especially
of the story.
Especially going back to our first perspective character, whose actual time in the story was very little. He was 12 when we got to know him and everything. He died shortly after.
Oh, was he 14?
He was 12. He was
okay,
full on
yeah.
12. So the idea that we're going to recontextualize and bring up a bunch of other stuff that he supposedly did, but then also say that he got caught by the townspeople for a murder and wasn't like, and that just somehow goes into the beginning of the show. That feels weird.
It feels like the kind of thing where the creator of the story wanted to have a pretty dramatic, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Maybe like retcon of sorts, or maybe just because we were showing this from his perspective at the beginning, he's not going to think much about all that stuff there.
Sure.
And if we want to go into, that's the reason why he was with Potaki and he's a, foster kid and all that stuff or whatever. And he's,
yeah. There's a lot of
weird
filling in the gaps.
There's a lot of weird filling in the gaps that I don't feel like are necessary in order to communicate the themes of the story, which is basically that, when it comes to human beings and the way that we interact with the intangible, the universal, the immaterial, the things that themselves don't have much that we can be certain of beyond belief and maybe some eventual science that obviously these people don't have much of with regards to that to begin with. And thus I find the more interesting parts of the episode is the stuff that happened with the speech with Rafal at the beginning of the episode, and then the confession booth bit with this nondescript priest here, because while this could be one of the Inquisitor hopefuls that got away during that one point in that one arc, that ended up leaving the guy to die, I think that might be who they were implying that this was, and it's not really relevant to the story that we know who they were, but they ask some questions of, what is it that you as a human being should do? Are we just beings that are there to go after our desires, our pleasures, to seek our bliss? Is there some aspect of the reason why we are drawn to these universal, immaterial, intangible things that means that we must go after them? Yeah, there's no real easy answer in that regard. Like, you can't really know anything in that regard, but it is important that we ponder it. It is important that we think on it.
Well, and
that we ask questions.
Right, and I think that's part of what kind of threw me for a bit of a loop in this episode, because that being something that's being brought up at the end of the show, I like it. It feels very similar to things that have been brought up consistently over the course of the show.
Yeah, it's in line with the themes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I was just thrown for a loop with the use of Rafal.
I think that with a show that gets so in deep into aspects of philosophy, which is really important to bring up also when we're talking about the sciences, that all sciences started from philosophy, from philosophers basically asking questions.
Yeah.
In order to get to the sciences, we had to have people ponder the immaterial, the things that they could not know of. By just asking enough questions, they end up wandering into camps of things that actually do have legitimate, concrete answers.
Yep.
Achievable with the scientific method, with testing and a whole bunch of other things. Or at the very least, get things enough into theory that people are willing to go, okay, we'll put a pin in that and kind of log that information away for humanity's benefit. And then if anybody wants to continue on that, go right ahead. We got stumped in that whole puddle.
Pick it up
there.
where we left off, which is a lot of what the show gets into with the passing of the knowledge from character to character. And I really did like the detail of the actual manuscript does not actually make it into his hands.
God, that's so tragic.
It's just the letter with the title, which you want to talk about poetically and the whole idea of humanity.
Fate and all that.
I love the concept that the simple desire of a human to care for another is what caused this discovery to come about.
Yeah.
I love that. That's really cool. And we did have the whole bit with with Novak of this story won't be told. Right? Like no one's going to know about this, which is like kind of talking to the audience, right?
Yeah, he's right.
Which is a good way to insulate things, given that this is going to be worked into history. And I'm going to bring up a caveat that my issues with this episode and how Rafal was used, there is always the possibility that even though Rafal is like a fictional character, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I believe he is potentially based on a real person, though.
Right, and
that's the part.
What I'm going to basically give a big blank check on in my mind is that maybe there's some account somewhere where Albert, you know, where it said that one of Albert's mentors killed his dad or something like that, right? But that's kind of where I go with that, because it felt like a needlessly tragic backstory, you know?
No, I think for me, by the point that we've gotten to this in the story, I don't need any of this to be backed up by historical accuracy. There are a lot of world building things very early on in the show that made me realize, yeah, this is an alternate Earth in terms of it's historically inspired fiction. But I didn't ever really look too hard into the world building side of things with this. I probably became more fascinated in the philosophical discussions that were had because of this show.
Sure.
And thus, when Rafal came back, I was like, really?
Yeah.
You're doing this? Okay.
I will still say,
I love that we got him.
Yeah,
but
I liked
then
the use
using
in
him,
the previous episode as a mentor. I feel like that fits really well.
Yeah, but it's something where in a lot of ways, Rafal as a mentor is basically just the hand of God of the story coming in and being like, you will learn this thing here, and you will have a reason for it,
and we're gonna have things connect to the beginning of the end, because that's narratively
so
cool.
having the teacher be anybody. If you took Rafal's name out of it, we wouldn't have as much connection to the teacher.
Yeah.
But if you did that, then you could have this story feel a little bit more narratively satisfying, because it came basically just from another young kid who had the desire to ask questions, and from potentially some fucked in the head psychotic kid who then was like, oh, I wanted knowledge, and your dad was so selfish with it.
Right,
I
so
don't
I just
get
killed
it.
him.
So yeah, I didn't want this to happen, but like,
but I had the knife on me.
yeah, but clearly, like, he's not thinking clearly about any of this,
Yeah, but I guess I shouldn't speak ill of the dead.
Right. No, I love the idea that, in so much as looking at Rafal as objectively as possible in the first arc, he was pretty sus in the way that his sociopathy extended to the way he interacted with people.
Intentionally very cold.
Well, not just cold, but like pathological liar, extremely condescending in his mental think.
Oh, yeah.
Had a very specific kind of chip on his shoulder. And in some ways, the way that Hubert basically smacked him upside the head with wonder feels also counterintuitive to the Rafal
that we
got here in this. So that's where I'm also it feels like a retcon a little bit of his character.
Well, and also the whole thing of you have the gathering of people, right? Okay, awesome. It's this really cool thing. Why is Rafal, the 12-year-old, giving this speech? I get that he's probably really smart, but I'm guessing a bunch of other people here are as well. Well, is it just that he likes to be dramatic and have the attention of everybody? He's smart enough?
No, I think this is the thing that's really scary about this, is that Rafal, I believe, was based on the kinds of boy genius polymaths that you'd have that ended up becoming these great people of science around this period, where their intelligence was that ridiculous, and so
because
the ability
it was that crazy, that
he didn't necessarily just attract smart people. He attracted all the people that were outcasts in their fields of education.
Yeah.
So he attracted the people that wanted to talk about alchemy and wanted to talk about
and
weird pseudosciences.
And I guess it's something where it just keeps pushing that suspension of disbelief for me. With and he did all of this while still being 12 kind of a thing.
Or even younger.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's a lot. But having the story focus on Albert, who then ends up being willing to question things again and hold a wonder within his heart and find this all again by having a talk in a confession booth, I feel like is where the strength of this story comes in, is the ability for these characters to be vessels for the creator of this story to ask questions and converse about the deeper things of this world in a way that brings beauty towards, reality, towards this world,
Sure.
towards this existence that we participate in, and to the ways in which human beings and our reason and thinking and feeling and belief and curiosity and all that play within it. Because we don't know that much when what we know is a drop, what we don't know is an ocean.
Right.
There's so much to know, and I feel like this episode has a depressing overtone, front-loaded by Rafal's monologue at the beginning, basically saying, "Hey." The creator's almost being a little bit too...
Yeah, they're breaking the fourth wall.
Breaking the fourth wall a little bit. Basically being like, we live in a world that does not value universal truth nearly as much as
it used to, at the very least.
It used to. That's kind of sad. And I on like initial thought was like, yeah, I agree. I do agree. I also think that there's more to it than that, and that the point of universal truth is not then to have answers, but it's about the pursuit of universal truth.
Answers are out there. Yeah. Like,
do you know you just indirectly like referenced there?
adventures out there.
Yeah, a couple things, but
okay.
yes, that's one of them. Oh man, that was great. But yeah, the idea of the pursuit of it being something that is noble and beautiful and worthwhile. And yet it's even still wrought with contradictions because of our lack as a species.
We do want to have self-doubt. We don't necessarily ever want to think that, we have arrived at the final, answer, all that stuff, and nothing will ever, top it or anything. Right. No, that's bad.
We're going to circle around this thing forever.
Yeah, exactly. At the same time, it could be disheartening to, constantly just be thinking about the fact that we're never going to arrive at the truth, right? And then that might make people not chase after it quite as much.
Well,
right?
I think that's the point, is that we've moved into a viewpoint that is actually the case, whereas we don't find passion in the pursuit. And thus the point is to unclick that part in our brains that goes, but what's the point of this then? What's the use of this? We become like the dad and go, stop it. Stop it. There's no point in any of this.
Right. And find passion in the pursuit. That's, yes.
We'll also celebrate others' passion in the pursuit. Because, like, we spend, like, the majority of the previous episode's discussion decrying the father, basically, for doing this. But we probably do this all the time without realizing it to other people.
No, absolutely. If, I am not one of the people that likes to think about things just for the sake of thinking about things. I definitely have that practical side of me, right? But it's the whole thing of, you never want 100% of a thing, right? What was
never want 100% of a thing?
There was a thing that I just heard. It was a saying that basically virtue will generally be considered the point between two extremes, right? Where
balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so
contentment.
Right. And so, it's
prudence.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Okay, you could get a lot by going into the virtues.
And so having doubt and all that stuff, yes, that's good. Don't go into that absolute kind of shit, right?
No, absolutes are
that's where you get
only
zealotry.
Sith deal with that.
Yeah, exactly, right? And hence, like the church being the big antagonist of the show, right?
Right.
But at the same time, like practicality is good. Don't be too extreme with it, and completely eschewing practicality, that's also not great.
Right. We are all basically caught between a world of extremes.
Right.
And thus, the exploration of the world can't be seen as wrong or evil or filled with useless waste just because extremes are out there. And I think that's where this story kind of gets at, is that you have the church being in this story the worst of the worst extremes throughout basically the entire story. And then at the end, in a confession booth, a young man basically finds his way that ends up changing the world because he spoke to a nameless stranger guy in a confession booth.
Right.
That guy wouldn't have made his confession booth at all to being a thing if he himself didn't need to find the space where he could naturally do this for himself. He was trying to self-medicate, and religion and his faith didn't allow him even the space to do that.
Yeah.
He believed in, forever, eternal, salvation, forgiveness, and all that, but couldn't himself even rectify his own doubts and worries without building a little therapy box.
Well, and just in the whole points between extremes thing, just his ability to give solace and new direction to this young man, that probably wouldn't have been able to happen without a lot of the horrible things that the church did in order to survive as long as it did, right? Maybe it could have happened some other way. It would have been different. That's not to say
it would have been different. Yeah.
Right.
And I love the inevitability of the miraculous nature of humanity in this regard, this episode, because this is where the story is asking us to believe in humanity, because you're going to have people like Rafal, who will be on the surface the best of us, and actually deep down potentially one of the worst of us.
Yeah.
You're going to have people like the father, who on the surface seem actually like some of the worst of us. But then when you get down into the deeper parts of it, maybe he saw something in Rafal and was like, no, not you.
Oh,
in fact, the way that you're coming about this with this, I'm going to intentionally take this away from you.
Yeah.
Was that the right thing to do? I don't think so necessarily. But there was something in that where he was like, I actually am going to stand up and resist this young boy here.
Yep.
You need to basically be able to accept that there are things that are going to be out of your reach, and that's okay. Obviously, this boy was just coming to thieve and steal and kill from him.
Right.
So, yeah, fuck Rafal in that regard. All my homies hate Rafal.
That might even have been why he brought him to the thing, is specifically just to get him out of the house.
Oh, no, I definitely think.
Yeah, because
I definitely think we can question everything about Rafal's intentions of the words
you're
that
a
he's
smart
saying there.
cookie. All right, cool.
Yeah, Rafal, the pathological liar who's really good at manipulating and persuading people.
Which also felt kind of weird then, that when he then comes to the door, I fully believe that everything that Rafal told him there was the truth, because he has...
he lied with the truth, absolutely.
No, yeah.
He used the true things about this kid to then be like, oh, yeah, I've been wanting to get close to this guy's materials. He's been collecting really good stuff. I'll be the tutor for his kid, and then I'll get into there.
Right, exactly.
And then I'll... his kid does happen to be a genius. Oh, this is the perfect way to get him out of here. I'll get him out of here at that regard.
He'll be, go talk to those people. You'll be busy for, several hours.
Yeah, that guy loves to run the same story 17 times in a row.
Right.
Will listen to him because he's depressed that nobody values his knowledge.
And if anything, what this does is this makes me more curious of what the creator's next story is going to be, because I feel like in a lot of ways the show kind of ended with episode 23 and Novak's death.
Well,
right?
The end of that definitely was a solid end for the
the fiction of the show, and now it's hey, let's make something to stitch the fiction into the history, right?
Well,
in a very disconnected way and all that, but let's do that. And I feel like that was almost getting into going into I don't know. It felt very like a different thing from the show that we got, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And so, but that does make me curious, because clearly the creator has a lot to say of what's their next property that they work on, right? What's their next thing where they're like,
probably already out.
Yeah, probably.
Because this finished in 2020.
Something like that.
Or maybe it started in 2020. Because it wouldn't be that long necessarily if this was the full thing here.
Nope.
I could see this being less than 70 chapters, 60 chapters.
And I am really glad that it ended here, right? That it didn't go into a keeping it going, for
the sake of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I do like that the story basically ended with two men in a confession booth having a conversation about the contradictions of humanity and all this philosophical stuff that human beings try to grapple with.
Sure.
But yeah, if you're going to have the conversation gravitate towards universal truth, then you have to talk about the areas in which truths are held in tension with each other, because we don't know what goes beyond those things.
Yeah, even to say something is true, that just means that the idea, the concept of truth is something that's so nebulous that we wouldn't be able to pin it down with something like words or a logical framework that we could understand, right? To say, I don't know, something is that's why the whole humans being in conflict with themselves is so powerful and important to think about, because both those things can be true at the same time, right? You want this, but you also want this that is, opposite of that or something like that, right? And so then it's you need to get into the nuance of what those statements mean, right?
Where is the point of connection between these two things?
Right.
Because usually the reason why they're framed as opposites is because they meet somewhere in the middle. It's an actual full rope, coiled and wrapped tightly together. Not just like I can just go snip and I can separate the two. It's like, no, they are fused together by something corded.
I want to do extra fencing practice at 6 p.m., but also my writing group starts at 6 p.m. What do I decide to do? I want to do both, right? Like it's things as basic as that. Maybe that's like sort of a whatever, example.
We're
but
gonna take time. How can we ever have time?
yeah.
No, I think some of my favorite media primarily will get into some kind of philosophical question or discussion before the art or story medium has concluded, to leave me as an audience member with some kind of question to ponder. And if I don't get that out of a story, that's basically the equivalent of a popcorn flick or popcorn like experience for me, where I'm just doing it to feel a specific way. And stories like this are the kinds of ones where I'm not coming to them for answers or like, this show is going to teach me happiness. But that being said, if there's anything that can trick its way into my deeper, understanding of the world and people and all that, it's going to be some kind of artistic medium that gets me to think about a thing that maybe I've stopped thinking about for a while because I don't find wonder in it anymore.
Because then that's giving you enjoyment. Like the show is giving you enjoyment when you're not watching the show, right?
Yeah.
And that's like the ultimate, some, whole is greater than the sum of its parts kind of a thing, for fiction, right? Is to then inspire us to make us ponder things and whatnot.
Right.
And then that ends up having an effect on our lives because we're able to, go on a little excursion into imagination, right?
Also,
and learn something real from it.
Yeah, and you're not a how's the best way to say this? You're not alone. Meaning that things that affect you affect others around you.
Right. Other people might be grappling with similar sorts of things. Yeah.
You can just say orb on the movements of the earth within earshot of somebody that ends up going, wait, stupid, the heavens move, the earth doesn't move.
Right, exactly.
Wait a minute. Like, hold on.
Interesting.
Why do I think about it that way? I love the simplicity of Albert as a character, given that he's the most historically accurate character that was actually in the entire anime, in that he was the one that was like also the quintessential child who was like, I love asking the why question. My dad told me at some point to only ask the why question about certain things. Oh, isn't that relatable? Then you go into like, oh, as an adult, he doesn't ask the why question anymore.
Oh, yeah. I've sort of accepted my lot in life because this is a thing that puts food on the table and all that stuff. But there's this other thing that I kind of want to explore, but I'm also kind of scared of it because, reasons or whatever.
Right, because then I'd have to then be curious again. I'd then have to hope again. I'd then have to wonder about things, and that could lead to even less happiness.
That could lead to disappointment and all sorts of other things.
All kinds of things. So, orb on the movements of the earth. A very, very unexpected end to the anime.
Yes.
But a very, very worthwhile journey, like, albeit a bit, like, hiccuped at the end.
Right. Like, it's,
Like, this is a strange one, because I still would recommend people to this anime a lot. But I would definitely caveat, basically, that the final episode might leave you a little bit upset.
like it's... I almost would want to just say...
I still recommend people The Matrix.
No, totally.
You know what I mean?
No.
Or like, Matrix is such a good trilogy.
Oh, no.
Despite being... No, that's what I'm saying, is that despite 2 and 3 being leagues below the first one.
But you could tell someone, just watch the first Matrix. And if you want to watch more, there's more, but you don't need to.
No, totally.
I feel like with this show, I would say, hey, watch Orb on the Movements of the Earth. There's a stopping point at episode 23. You could totally take that as the end point. There's 2 more episodes if you want. You don't necessarily have to watch those.
I would basically posit that 23 leads so cliffhangerly into 24 that it's this thing of where now you should experience the full thing. I would also recommend to people basically if they're going to watch Matrix for the first time ever, because in some ways this is to me the equivalent of taking something philosophical and scientific and drawing a massive drama out of it where it doesn't need to be that dramatic. But this is a way to make you understand where human reasoning from the educated and uneducated, from the faithful, from the from the faithless, to the people in power, the people not in power, were at this point in time, even though it is a hyper dramatization. I think this is the kind of story that gets people excited in history and learning about history and where our species has come from. And that's I think that's always worth exploring. There's definitely a caveat, yes, with the ending, but Albert still goes into my, icons list alongside the other main characters of these arcs.
Because I feel like for me, I wasn't able to get it to quite that far, and I feel like it was because the backstory threw me off a lot, but I feel like then we didn't actually have a lot of time in the present with Albert.
Yeah, we could have had more, but
the kinds of things that were set up and what the glimpse we got of him, I was excited for that,
right.
But then,
but I think the point is that Albert's not meant to be some important, transcendent, world-shattering, historical shifting character in the same way that none of these
he's
people,
another piece in the chain of human history and
right, and we are all just that, really, like
totally yep no I got you on that one
but that was cool having the little connection point, because I was waiting, I'm like, and I kind of gave up a while ago, but I was like, when are we getting into Copernicus? This is literally his time period. I'm like waiting. I'm like, when is he coming in here? I'm like, was this meant to be something where Rafal was a stand-in for Copernicus? Because in a lot of ways, Rafal feels exactly like how Copernicus actually was growing up.
Right.
But I'm like, no, it's too early in the in the actual time
and then,
period.
oh, hey, he's dead.
Oh, hey, what do you know?
He got roasty toasty.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Well, and you were right, pretty close to the time, because he was 5 years older than the Albert, so that's not too far off.
Well, it was a good 30 or 40 years, but yes,
yeah,
because it took Albert 15 to 20 years to then become a teacher where he would
and then meet
actually
Copernicus,
teach
and Copernicus probably would have been young at the time. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
To put this in context, 1492.
Is Columbus.
Was Columbus
right
sailing to the New World? Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's where we're at in human history.
Yep.
Galileo isn't for like another 100 years.
Wild.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like Copernicus was mostly just in terms of moving and shaking a lot of things, but it wasn't really until much later that things were actually accepted. That's the other kind of depressing part when you look at the ways in which humanities look at astronomy and the solar system changed so slowly in terms of people that had the right idea with things, and just getting funneled through history.
And hence Draka's whole thing of shit will speed up because books are going to be, people are going to have easy access to books,
Yeah. But okay,
that's Orb.
That's Orb.
All right.
The Movements of the Earth, a series of anime completed on this channel. That's a rare thing.
Favorite perspective character?
Oh,
I feel like Oxy is the shoe-in, but
Oxy's an amazing character.
Oxy was awesome.
I actually genuinely really love Botany, though. I think that Oxy is a very special underdog type character, so he's much easier to kind of click and connect with. But I think Yolenta spoke to something that I resonate with far more than any of the stuff that the other characters do. I feel like Botany was the most fun. Yolenta was my favorite character from a protagonist perspective. Novak is the Novak cheats the scale
Novak's
because he's in every arc basically.
Exactly, right.
But I loved Yolenta's transformation as well because I really feel like I understood it, and I love the tragedy of the way that she's connected to Novak, and yet
Yeah, that was absolutely beautiful.
I feel like everything connected to Novak gets upgraded, and that's why also Yolenta's a lot more.
And I think that's a decent part of where my frustration with like this episode comes from. Is like episode 23 was not that long ago. Like we just had.
We just had, masterpiece episode.
Right, exactly. I'm like, oh, you were like just in the middle of sticking the landing, right on this crazy high concept show of we're gonna change the main character constantly.
Maybe the creator didn't know how to end it. Yeah,
I don't know.
But there we go. All right, what about you? It was Oxy.
Oxy, there's
Oxy was wonderful.
The progression, like Oxy was a slow burn for me, but the progression and then getting to the point where then he's just standing in the road, like holy shit, that was awesome. That was amazing.
That was fantastic. But all right, y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, it's going to be a new show. Check out it. Links in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general. Also, be sure to check out our Twitch channel. See if any of that interests you. We'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.